Hi everyone, we're going to have some fun today and practice with some textures. I'm going to do a little bird's nest with some eggs in, quite appropriate for Easter. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take my pencil and draw 3 eggs. I'm on a bit of Bockingford today, which is a wood pulp paper, and the reason I've chosen this is because I'm going to show you some textures and lifting out, and I know this paper has a really good size on it, which is the coating on the paper, to lift off. So there's a reason that I've chosen this, but it honestly doesn't matter. You can use whichever paper you've got for this exercise. So I've drawn 2 egg shapes here. And then the third egg shape. Egg shapes are quite tricky to draw, really. I just want to slightly overlap. So I've got 3 eggs there. I'm going to put them in a nest. So we're going to do a wiggly line all the way around. And then a narrower wiggly line there. And it's going to get wider. So this is just giving you a little bit of perspective. It's going to get wider there. Then we can have an underside to that nest. Just here, a little curve. So that's giving us a nest shape, a bit like a bowl really. I'm going to use a tiny bit of masking fluid. So I have got here, it's a white masking fluid, but you can get blue masking fluid as well. And I'm going to use a colour shaper to apply it. So it's a rubber tipped or silicone tipped tool, which is actually for blending pastel but works fantastically for masking fluid. You've just got to be careful of your brushes really. So I tend to use one of these to apply it, and this is preserving the white of the paper. One of these to apply it, or a knitting needle. Now a knitting needle tends to be a finer line. You can get all sorts of tools. You can get drawing pens, ruling pens to do it, like nib pens. I find this works for me, but it's just finding what works for you. A bamboo skewer is quite good as well. You could even use something like a cotton bud. You can put soap onto a brush, a cheap brush, and use that. It will eventually wet the brush though, so don't use your best brushes. So I'm coating over all the eggs, and I'm giving them a nice edge, because whatever edge I give them now is what the egg's going to be. So you have to use it as if you're painting on white basically. There we go. And then you're going to let that dry, or you can dry it with a hairdryer, but just don't do it too hot. Okay, so I've dried these with a hairdryer, so they look shiny, but they are totally dry. Just not too hot with the hairdryer. I've got a round number 10, a round number 6 and a rigger. This bit of Bockingford is only 5 by 7 inches, so it's not huge. You could use a wash brush if you wanted to. I've also got my usual little Cotman palette. So we're going to have a go at creating some lovely texture on here. So the first thing I'm going to do is wet all the paper. I'm going to get a little bit of a background in and a little bit of some colour onto the bird's nest. It's really good to do stuff like this because it just expands your skill set, and it's just playing. And every time you play with something, you learn something new. This is how all of my techniques are discovered, apart from the ones that when I make a mistake and I think, oh, that was good. And that sometimes happens quite often, actually. So I'm going to come in, first of all, with a little bit of cerulean blue. So Bockingford's a wood pulp paper, so you have less time to paint wetting wet. However, you need a nice even coat, no puddles. But you've got plenty of time for something this size anyway. So that's the blue come on. I'm going to take a little bit of sap green. So I am thinking that I'm looking down at this bird nest on a branch in a tree. So therefore I'm going to see some greenery. around. So I'm going to pop a little bit of greenery in there. I might even pop a branch in eventually. Okay, I'm going to swap down now to a number 6, so I'm a little bit more in control. And I'm going to start with the colour that I would think is the main colour of a bird's nest, which is burnt umber. I would suggest you watch this video through and then have a go, because there's going to be things up here that you're going to go, oh, she didn't tell me about that. So I am doing wiggly lines. I don't mind if there's an odd gap. I want there not to be gaps around the eggs. You see I'm doing these wiggly lines, so that's the start of this texture of the bird's nest. You can create some texture with just your brush. Rinse that out. I'm going to come into ultramarine blue. Drop that in around the eggs. You can see how I'm mixing on the paper. So I'm letting the paint do its thing. I'm going to take a little bit of that through as well. So basically little wiggly lines. Then I'm going to use a little bit of alizarin crimson. Might sound mad, but it will work. Bring some of that through in places as well. So we're just going to let this settle and grab a couple of tools. Okay, I'd like to tell you that I'm always going to be much more organised, but I've found my knitting needle. So a knitting needle is great for indenting. So can you see as I'm pressing, I'm drawing and I'm getting these lovely lines. So we're going to create the twiggy effect by just moving this around. Wherever you hit, and it's like drawing with a pencil, but you're drawing with a knitting needle, you're going to create an indent, and that's going to collect the paint into it, and it's going to make it darker. So you can do as much or as little of this as you like. You can take some of the ones out from that edge, and what will happen is it will run into the indent. So it can even go into the sky and into the green area. Can you see how that's running out? It's creating a lovely effect. And the other thing that I've got is some wool. Yarn, embroidery thread works quite well as well. And it's all chopped up into bits like this. What I'm going to do is take a bit of it. I'm going to wet it. And I'm going to wring it out fairly well. What I want is for it to, in some places, push out the colour, and in some places lift up the colour. So basically then what I'm going to do is place this on and push it down. I'm going to do a little bit more that side. Brown wool works quite well because it doesn't show the stains and you can reuse it. It does take a bit of practice, this. It needs to get the right wetness, but it is very fun. Right, so I'm going to pop that on, and then you have to go and get a cuppa because you've got to wait for this to dry naturally. Okay, so after about 10 minutes you can have a little bit of a peel away and you can see if some texture's happened. It has happened quite well, so I'm going to peel all of this away now. You'll see what we've got. So if when you peel it doesn't look like anything's happened yet, just pop it back. It could be that it's still too wet. So what's happened with mine is it's lifted out in places. You can see I've got lighter, and then it's imprinted in places. So we're going to work with this. I'm going to dry this off really well now. Okay, so that's nicely dry. What we're going to do now is we're going to add to this beautiful texture. So the first thing that I'm going to do, which is what this paper's great for, is to paint on a few bits of water and lift off. So I'm painting on a stroke of a twig, and I've got some kitchen towel and I'm going to dab off. Sometimes you have to do it more than once. Just going to agitate the surface. It hasn't quite come off. That's better. So you can see me stroking back and forth. It depends on the paper, and then it will lift a little bit of light. I'm going to do a bit here. So if you haven't got enough light, that's ways you can pop a little bit more in. And you want to focus especially on the edge, the inside edge, before it goes into the dip of the nest, because that's going to bring out some lights. So if I take a little bit here, see how I'm going back and forth? It's just helping that lift that very fine line. Do one here. Lift that out, and it's just giving you that extra little bit of light. If I take my rigger, then I can come in and start to create some lines with some burnt umber. So you can add extra lines as well. So I'm going to do a few of these. Then I'm going to show you another technique. The trick with all of this is to not lose the texture that you've already got. So I'm coming into this section around the eggs because I want this to be a bit darker. But I definitely don't want to lose the texture that's already there, that's imprinted from the wool or the yarn. You see how that's building up? Something so simple can be really effective. If I come back into the ultramarine blue, because a blue and a brown will always make a darker colour anyway, I'm going to bring a little bit more around the eggs, so they're going to stand out nicely when we come to paint those. Come back into the burnt umber, take a little bit more of that in there as well. So another technique you can do is to take a fairly heavy amount of water on, and then you can flood that water with paint. So you see, I'm just popping this in, and it gives a less natural stroke. So I'm using the blue so you can see the difference. Take another bit in there. It's hard for you to see in the camera light. So if I just take a bit of that blue in there, and you can see it flooding along. And it's come all the way to that end. But the difference is it started quite thick and then it's worked to be quite fine. So it's giving you a different type of stroke by flooding it into the water. So I'll do another one here. I'll stick with the blue to do this, and then you'll be able to see. It's quite hard for me to see where I'm putting it in the light as well. But you can see, because I'm on a board, I can tilt it and I can let it flow to where it wants to go. It's all about getting things to look a little bit more uneven, and all these little tips work. So I'll run again. And then with a damp brush you can run some of these out with the wet of the brush, and it's creating again different tones within there. I can run some water into these wetter areas here and let it run around as well. You see that starting to build up. Now this bit here is a bit too uniform, so I'm just going to come over this with a bit more of the burnt umber. The other thing you can do is take some of that wool, and if you scrunch it, we all get a bit messy doing this, so this is still a bit damp, but you can dip this into the paint and take that on as well. So you're getting more textured effects. I'm just going to dry this off because it's getting a bit messy, and then I can come in again. Okay, so that's dried now, so I can just bring in a little bit more of the texture from the wool. You can use dry wool, you can use wet wool. It's all adding extra bits of texture. And giving it a really nice effect. You will end up with a bit mucky hands. I'll pop in a few more just with the brush. Just try and keep them as random as possible. It's a really fun exercise. I'm going to pop in a little bit of a tree branch that this is resting on, I think. So I'm just going to wet an area I'm just going to take a branch, and take that branch in. If I bring a little bit more dark, this is just the burnt umber down one side, it's going to give me a dark side and a lighter side. And I can also then, with a bit of the ultramarine, get in really close to this edge of the nest so it feels like it's sitting on that branch. Bring that dark along here. The ultramarine and burnt umber make a really nice dark. And then that branch needs to continue the other side, so I'm going to make it slightly bigger this side. I mean, you don't have to do the branch, you could just do semi-abstract, just leave it. Just within a background. Again, a little bit of the ultramarine just up to this edge, so it's sitting nicely on the branch. A bit more of the umber, get nice and dark that side. You can do the flow thing again, just with a little bit of water to flow out. So this is just my round number 6, and I'm just taking a little bit of water just so that I start to get a few branches on there as well. It's all about just creating a nice composition, making it nice and interesting. Just taking a few little branches, keep them nice and light. I don't want to detract, but it's that flow principle again, where you're taking the water, you're letting that thicker paint flow through, and it will flow all the way along if you let it. It's really effective. Okay, so I'm going to dry this one off and we'll go on to the eggs. Okay, so that's nicely dry. You can buy tools that remove masking fluid, like a hard rubber, or you can just use the base of your fingers. If it's a little bit, then a base of your fingers is just enough. You just use those two and just rub back and forth. Just make sure it's nice and dry before you do that. And then you've got these lovely egg shapes up here. So I'm going to go to my round number 6. And we've still got to think about that direction of the light. We're going to get a base on these eggs. So I'm going to take a little bit of water. I'm going to use the cerulean blue. I'm just keeping that light in the centre. Well, it's to the left of the centre. The light's going to hit the same place on every single egg. So you just got to think about that. So it's suddenly got this pop of a lovely cerulean blue. So we need a little bit of shadow, and the complementary colour for shadow would be something orange. So I'm just going to use a bit of cadmium red, but burnt sienna would work as well. I'm just going to pop a little bit of shadow on that right hand side. You can blend that through and it will nicely look like shadow. Okay, so I'll dry that off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, and I just want to define that shadow a little bit more. So if I take a tiny bit of the cadmium red, just thinking where I can mix it in here, cadmium red and a bit of the cerulean blue, I basically want a neutral colour, and I'm getting this sort of brown, which is just perfect for shadow on those eggs. I want to make sure that this isn't too strong. If I dip in a little bit of water, you see that? It's not as strong. Then I'm just going to come over that bottom edge of the egg, and here, and here. So what I'm creating is hard shadow now. So this is shadow where the sun is hitting the egg. So you're getting a hard shadow. Just gonna blend that a little bit with a damp brush. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. So the last thing we're going to do is speckle the eggs. Now you can do the speckling of the eggs with a toothbrush. In fact, let me toothbrush, you can speckle really close like that, and you're just pulling back with the loaded brush and it will speckle. You could use a fan brush and again flick very close. We want this to be close. I'm going to use a hog hair brush because it's a smallish brush that I've got, and I can keep really close to the eggs, and then I don't need to cover everything else up. So it's basically laziness that I'm using this brush, but it works. You will get a bit of blue on your fingers, so you've got to load the brush up. So I've loaded that up. I'm going to get as close as I can and flick through. You see those speckles? You've got perfectly blue speckles. And then that shadow colour, you can dab some of them off if they go a bit high. You can cover that up as well. That shadow colour, I'm going to do the same. So it was a bit of cadmium red and a bit of cerulean blue to make a yucky brown that works for shadow. And then I can do the same speckle. Get some speckles on the eggs. You don't want too many. And then the last thing I can do to make the eggs pop is to come in nice and dark in here. So I'm going to use a little bit of ivory black because I've got quite a lot of warmth in here anyway. I'm going to bring that in nice and close to the egg. See that? This is with my round number 6. And it's just going to help those eggs to stand out a little bit more. Keep it nice and dark. I'm keeping it around that dark side of the egg, the shadowed side, all the way around that shadow side, but then just taking it a little bit further so that it's keeping it within the centre. And in fact, you can just shadow a little bit further, and you've got a really nice shadow for each of those eggs then. Just pull that around that bit here. Okay, so I'm going to dry that off and I'll take the tape off. So there we go, so it's all finished. We've got loads of birds nesting in our garden at the moment, so we're lucky that we get to see this and the delicateness of the nests. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop another video here and a playlist here, and I shall see you next time.